Welcome back, everyone, to the officially second episode of It's About Time with Jared and Drew. You might be wondering why I'm holding up both of these watches. Well, today we are going to be talking about the differences between quartz and automatic movements. But before we do that, of course, we have our little segment that we like to do called What's on the Wrist. So, today I am wearing, as usual from my last video, my Mito Great Wall Automatic. My favorite watch, my most accurate. I love it. And just a fantastic wear. Drew, what are you wearing today?
I brought out for my personal collection the Rado-centric Skeleton Edition. This is an automatic. It features stainless steel and ceramic as well. This was their new line that they got out a couple years ago. They started inventing the skeleton version of this, and I thought it was a great tool to show off the inner works of automatic watches. So that is
what a show off!
It's one of my favorite lookers.
Well, it is very, very, very nice watch. So, so let's start with this watch here.
We will start with Quartz first.
Yes. Quartz watches are very interesting. I'm going to hold this one up for you, for everyone, just to see a little bit more of the inner workings. And yeah, I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering, like, what's inside of that watch?
Exactly.
Right? So let's go over this, right? So here's what we got here. Over here, you have your coil. Over here, you have your battery compartment. Over here, below all the cool, neat inner workings, is a quartz crystal somewhere in there. You have the circuit board of all over here, which pretty much tells the watch what to do, when to oscillate, vibrate the quartz, and when to send the signal through the coil to the battery case to get the watch, of course, ticking. And then holding it all in place is the case. Really nothing too fancy. I can see that you guys can see that fairly well. Unfortunately, Drew was explaining to me earlier that with this watch, the reason why it does not work anymore is the battery exploded. We're going to go into that in a few minutes. But that's your basic quartz movement. There's really not a whole lot to it. It is simple. It is basic. Again, you have your battery. You have your coil, which is transmitting all the energy. You have your quartz crystal, which is sending the beats per hour, usually around 32,000 or so beats, which is very high and makes these watches extremely accurate. And then, obviously the circuit board to keep everything in place and to keep all the electrical impulses going together. It's like having the electrical circuit panel on your house. Without that, your house does not run. And just a case to really hold the entire movement really in place. So that's pretty much the basic of the quartz movement. It's very interesting. How did these come about?
Well, let's talk about the history of quartz. Okay, as you know, the history of watches, and a brief little summary. In the 1800s, you first had pocket watches used for the railroad. Those, again, were hand wind. Hand wind watches were the biggest thing in the watch industry up until about the 1950s, 1960s. When automatics started to come into play, the actual little tidbit, the most expensive watch in the world right now is a 1947 Patek Philippe, 1947, 1943. And the reason is it was the first one that Patek Philippe ever produced. And I think it just sold for about $10 million. And that is when the automatics started to come into play. So they started to enter the market in the late 1940s. Up until that point, you had hand-wind wristwatches and you had hand-wind pocket watches. Okay, in the 1950s, 1960s, what came about was tuning forks. Tuning forks were the grandfather to the current quartz model watches that you see today. And they used vibrations. So a battery was put in, it would vibrate the tuning fork, and it would create the movement was a little different than what you currently see in quartz movements. That was a lot more expensive, but they started to become very popular in the 1950s, 1960s. Fast forward to the 1970s, that is when companies like Seiko and Citizen entered the market, and they said, okay, I can one-up the quartz. One-up the tuning forks. As the tuning forks had a sweeping motion just like automatic watches do, Quartz came in and used pulse technology, and that's why quartz watches tick and they don't sweep, because it's a pulse. It's a beating of a pulse that keeps beating on the actual battery, which sends out signals to the watch. They were very successful when they came out in the 1970s because they were a fraction of the price that automatic watches were. And it almost sent all the Swiss watches that you know today, Omega, Rolex, pretty much any of them that you can think of, Oris, Rado, any of these watches that you see in the stores or on billboards or in the Olympics, to sell all of them. They all sent almost out of the market. The reason being is because of this quartz movement, and the Swiss companies were either forced to adapt or go extinct, and they ended up adapting. What they ended up doing was twofold. Number one, they developed quartz watches for themselves so they can get their brand a lot cheaper to compete with the Japanese movements. And number two, what they did was they formed groups. The Swatch Group, which is a company that you currently see in malls, ridiculously bad designs for kids, that still operates today. People just think of them as a cheap little company. Actually, they're the parent company to basically, 70% of the market of Swiss brands today that you currently see.
They are the largest conglomerate, hands down.
And if they didn't form this conglomerate, they would have gone out of business as well. So that's a little history on how Quartz entered the market and how they competed with the Swiss. And today, they go back and forth with new innovations, different functions, different styles, different things that the bands are made out of, different textures. So new things come out daily. And today is a whole different market, which we'll talk about in future episodes, on what the watch world, the pitfalls the watch world faces in today's market. But I'll go back to Jared on the quartz.
Yeah, so just all you have to just really remember, just to sum up a little bit, battery powers the watch, obviously, sends the power and impulses through the coil, which then in turn powers the crystal to vibrate back and forth through the circuit and sends these little impulses to this little kind of yellow goldenish second hand here, which just has it tick, tick, tick. Just has it keep going. And the reason why it's very accurate, again, is because it is vibrating, going back and forth 32,000 times per second. Doesn't that kind of make your head spin?
Yeah, and to wrap up the whole quartz segment, the easy advantages of quartz. If you're looking to buy a quartz watch in the market,
cheap and accurate.
That's right. It's accurate.
Cheap and accurate.
It's cheap. It's easy to buy. It's easy to fix. It's easy to throw out. Okay, because there's not many components. When they go bad, like Jared was saying, if you let the battery in there for 20 years, it's going to corrode the whole circuit board. It's easier just to throw them out than to actually fix them.
Yeah, you know what we might as well do with this one? If you guys want to get a laugh, might as well just take a screwdriver and just pop that movement right out, put a new one right in there.
And that pretty much wraps up our quartz segment on these type of watches. So now we go off to the automatic sector.
Now, for this...
what's up for you? You can give a diagram.
Fantastic. For this segment, I wanted to do something a little bit different. Drew, can you stand up, please? And bring that a little bit closer. A little further back and down. All right. Actually, that seems to be perfect. So, this book right here, I just wanted to show everybody to give credit to where credit is due. This is called The Wristwatch Handbook, A Comprehensive Guide to Mechanical Wristwatches by Ryan Schmidt. This is a book I'm currently reading. It is the greatest book I think I've ever read about watches. Will tell you anything and everything you want to know about a quartz movement, about a manual wine movement, about an automatic movement. I haven't really gotten too much into pocket watches yet, but I'm pretty sure it has that as well. So I'm gonna have Drew bring this just a little bit closer and a little bit, and right there is perfect. So these are your basic internal parts. Some, but not all. Some watches are more complicated than others, but this is the good basic. So here's what we got. This right here is your crown. That's almost essentially, and we're going to get into this in a minute, your key to start the engine to the car. Kind of without that, you're not going too many places, but, you know, can an automatic watch function without it? Yes, it can, because of all these other inner components. So one of the things that's really important here I want to point to is the escape wheel, which is down here, which contains the pallet fork as well as the pallets. Those are what we like to call little jewels. And that constantly spins, rotates, and it releases all of the energy that is within the balance wheel, which is over here. And there's a balance spring that's within that. And what that does is that expands and contracts. The more that expands, the less power reserve is in your watch. The more it contracts, the more power reserve and the higher performing your watch is going to be, and essentially more accurate. You have your fourth wheel down here, your third wheel usually up here in the middle, a little bit behind it, still attached to it. Again, all this stuff is using jewels. You also have your center wheel, and your mainspring barrel is actually up here. And you can see this mainspring coil is very tightly wound, which means that it's pretty much wound to capacity power reserve. In a watch like this, it could be up to about 60 to 72 hours. Typical is between 38 to about 42 hours, give or take a little bit. But turning the crown here moves all these wheels, the first, second, third, fourth wheel, which then in turn powers the escape wheel, the pallet fork here, as well as the tiny jewels that are within that. Helps it go back and forth, pretty much just like the quartz crystal inside of a quartz watch. Although, as you can see with an automatic, there's a lot more life and a lot more substance, a lot more elements, many more moving parts that obviously need to be taken care of over time. And actually, I'm going to have Drew show his Rado again, so we can just get a very good idea of basically what you guys just saw in the book in an actual watch itself. We're going to hold it a little bit closer. I'm going to try to get on the other side of the camera again. I know it's a little hard to see with the glare, but up here, that's your balance wheel, and inside of that is the balance spring, two very key components of the watch. You have your crown, and you have all your wheels, gears, levers, and screws within your watch that are helping to perform it at its top tier performance. And somewhere down in there is the pallet fork with the jewels, the little pallets on that, which are vibrating back and forth. And it's really what all these things are doing is they're sending energy throughout the entire watch. It's a very, very cool system. It's very complicated, not as accurate as a quartz watch, but it's pretty much a thing of beauty. Very, very true watch enthusiasts will pretty much only wear automatics.
Now let's talk about winding them up a little bit. People always say, you know, the advantage to quartz is you stick in a battery and it's ready to roll. That's true. When you're coming in to wind a watch, Jared and I have actually two different philosophies on how to start the watch. Let Jared explain what he prefers first, and then I'll tell you what I prefer second.
Okay. So something that's kind of cool with automatic watches. I've heard some people use the term like grab and go. That's like kind of true. One of the things that I do just to get them moving a little bit, if I have a watch that I haven't worn in, let's say, weeks or even months, and it's completely, totally dead, not even moving, the balance wheels, not vibrating back and forth, not spinning at all, I personally will pick up the watch, I will rotate the crown, Um, Usually maybe about 8 to 10 turns, sometimes not even, just to get the watch starting to tick. So when I see the seconds hand sweeping, I will stop. I will then put it on my wrist, and that's where the term grab and go kind of comes from. Give it a few turns. Drew has a little bit of a different approach to this.
I enjoy pretty much the feel of getting the watch started on its own. Okay, the great thing about automatic watches is they run on your hand movement. Anytime you are shaking your wrist or turning your wrist, you are winding your watch because it is a wheel and a spring that gets tighter
Yeah, it's
and tighter
called
and
the
tighter.
rotor.
Correct. And you'll see the rotors in the case backs that a lot of them, the exhibition case backs that a lot of them have.
Yeah, so, actually, I'll show you this to you guys, and this is what really gets going. There's a wheel there that is ever so slightly turning, which you guys can see. And this right here is what gets the watch going. That's pretty much your battery.
That is your battery. It's a mechanical battery, and all you got to do is actually shake it back and forth, and you are winding your watch. So there's two ways to get them started. You can turn the stem 8 to 10 times. Some people do it 20 to 30. You know,
both ways are very safe.
Both ways are pretty safe for an automatic watch. I prefer just to shake it up and let it go. And as much as you shake it up, a lot of these watches, we'll talk about this in future episodes, have power reserves. Power reserves show you how much battery is in an automatic watch, how much time left you have. So a lot of these watches, this Rado, for instance, does have an 83-hour power reserve, which is extremely high. Usually power reserves go
over 3 days.
That's correct. Usually they only go anywhere between 38 and 52, which is what the most automatic watches do go. This has an 83, so this is actually very rare. These days they do have automatic watches that'll go up to 10 days. If you put it down for 10 days, it'll continually unwind. Jaeger-LeCoultre, Oris, they all have this new technology that can go up to 10 days now. So if I were to just drop this watch off, put it on the counter, 10 days later, pick it up, it's still where it needs to be.
However, with that, I'm going to put like a little disclaimer. Majority of those watches, actually none of them that I know of are like automatics with the rotor. Instead, they are automatic manual winds, have two very large barrels which store the power reserve in and have very special balance springs to them, which are usually made of a very special kind of material which help to hold the power in for a longer amount of time.
And they're very expensive. That's the downfall of a lot of automatic watches. When you're talking about Swiss automatics, at least, you can get them cheap if you want to go with Japanese automatics. But if you're talking about a Swiss automatic, you're looking at timepieces that are going to last you many years, but it's also going to cost you a lot of money. It's an investment, to say the least. Well, that pretty much wraps up our show for tonight. We thank you for joining us for episode 2. Episode 3, we are going to get into our top 5 worst watch brands. Both of us will have different lists on this topic. And Jared, you want to close it out?
Yes. Well, I'm going to put Drew on the spot here a little bit, actually. We're going to talk for just a quick second before we go. It's like a little encore. Preferences. What do we prefer? So I'm going to ask Drew first. So, what do you prefer, quartz or automatic?
I was always an automatic guy. I got Jared into automatics. Automatics to me are, it's like an engine unto itself, and they do say when you talk about automatics, the watch gets used to you because you move a certain way, therefore the watch becomes a part of you. I do have quartz watches, not many. Mostly they're Concord Mariners from the 1980s because I love the way they look. The only reason I buy quartz watches is because of how they look, not really because of how they run, even though they're very accurate. What about you, Jared? What's your preference in terms of watches?
I actually only wear automatics now, like Drew said, because he got me into them for a very long time. And at first, I really cared about accuracy with them, and if they didn't perform within like a certain range, like I had to sell them and get rid of them and do whatever to them. I prefer. I have a specific kind of watch that I prefer. I'm gonna say a day date, which I love. A chronometer, very accurate, usually to within -4 to +6 seconds per day, but can also be regulated. Yeah, automatics are just great. I sleep with it on. The only time I take it off my wrist, honestly, is to shower with it. Don't particularly like taking them in the ocean. This is, not a watch that I will almost ever take around water. I have another one. It's a manual wind, and I wear that one for, you're going to see that in future episodes. It's my Orient Power Reserve. Just got it. It's absolutely fantastic. Performs like 12 seconds a day, but I mean, I really don't care. I use it for golf and going to be using it for the beach. It could be beat up. It could do whatever to it. So my preference strictly is automatic. You could do anything and everything with them. And like Drew said earlier, they will last you a lifetime.
If you take care of them. But
that's true.
That basically ends our episode tonight.
Don't forget, by the way, please like our videos. Please subscribe to our videos. We are going to have our email address in the description down below. So please, send us emails, send us questions. We want to interact with you guys. We're creating this show for you. Let's have some fun with it. So, like Drew said, thanks so much for joining us. And next episode is our list of top 5s.
Worst watch brand.
Worst.
For you to look out on. And outside of that, everybody take care.
See you guys later.
Keep watching for next time.